Good morning. It's been a long time since I've done a live video in a bathrobe. It's not really a bathrobe, it's just a robe. Um, but that's kind of like iconic of me. I used to do them on Instagram all the time on my IG stories, and I was like, I miss having those morning chats in a robe, so I'm gonna do that again. Also, please ignore my background. This room is still. It's the last room that I'm addressing, obviously, in my entire house. The rest of the house looks awesome. This room, I've just been like, never mind. Um, so I have also not done a live video in a little while. And I've been sitting with a lot. As you guys know or may not know, good morning. Please say hi as you hop on. And if you're watching the replay, please say hi so I can greet you as well. I run a lot of different projects, and one of them happens to be a Patreon where I share a lot of truther information. So a lot of information that would get banned if I shared it on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or anywhere like that. I'm very protective of my platforms, and I don't desire to end up there. So I just moved everything to Patreon. And now our Patreon also has a Telegram channel so that all the members of Patreon can communicate on Telegram, which is a chat app. But you can have a whole channel for just like members. It's a private channel. So every time that there's a new drop on Patreon, I let them know through the Telegram channel, and it's also a way for us to stay in touch. So, I've been adding content in there, and one of the things that I pride myself on in sharing when I share this kind of content is being really aware of what I'm sharing, that I'm not sharing just everything that blows out of like the alternative theory blowhole. Okay. And this is something I really want to talk to you today. There's a lot of alternate theories about the times we're living in, what's happening right now, who's involved, things of that nature. There's a lot of people putting out a lot of off the wall concepts, theories, labeling them as truther, labeling them as, woke or whatever. And a lot of it is just garbage, to be honest. And even though I myself consider myself to be a truther and in search of truth, I'm very discerning when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I'm very mindful of what it is that I'm sharing on my Patreon, that it's not just random information that, whoever is spewing out, but that I process it, I watch it, I read it, I sit with it, I see how it resonates in my own body as being true or not true, and then I pass it along for other people to witness so they can check into their resonance and decide how they feel about it, okay? So this idea of really understanding your resonance and discernment is key and cornerstone, especially as we move forward to this next phase of reality, which we are all going to shift into, whether we know it or don't know it, whether we want to or don't want to. That's the direction that we're going in. It just is what it is. And one of the things that, aside from the insane amount of conspiracy stuff that, like, a lot of it just is, like I said, garbage. The other thing I've witnessed for the past several years on the internet has been this really weird phenomenon of spiritual teachers who show up on the scene and they look the part, they talk the part, they have huge followings, people like love them, and they have no depth, and it's totally regurgitated information, and it's very shallow. Super shallow. And yet the other day I was listening to an interview with a psychic I happen to admire tremendously and I've followed for a long time, who's just very genuine, and that's why I love her so much. And she said this. She's like, it's really important that people be aware of how many people have decided to monetize on this concept of New Age and take these really profound metaphysical concepts and turn it into like a whitewashed version of what these practices really are and what they mean and what these wisdoms mean. And, I see that all the time. And one really good example of this is Doreen Virtue, which I'm going to blast for like a second because I have earned my right to blast her. And I'll say why. She has been around for over 20 years in the New Age metaphysical world. Forever. Forever. Okay, when I started 11 years ago, almost 12, down this pathway of studying metaphysical concepts, her name was around. Okay, and she had been there long before that. And when I was introduced to her, I watched a video of hers, and then I saw her decks. She was super famous for making decks. I was like, this lady is a quack. That's the very first thing I thought. I'm like, she has no real depth. She's a genius businesswoman who tapped into a marketplace where she could make a buttload of money, and she made it. And she has all these people listening to everything she says and thinking that she's a prophet. And in her videos, she's like sitting in this chair in the woods surrounded by animals and just like totally playing up the part of this esoteric human being. And watching her, I could feel in my body this discordance. There was no cohesion watching her. There was no resonance watching her. It felt very distorted. And I felt very uncomfortable watching her. And I knew, I'm like, this lady is just using this community of people to make a mint because she's smart, right? And so she spent 20 years making a mint off this community. And interestingly enough, when she stops being profitable and she stops making money off of the community, she flips her scripts and starts talking about Jesus and how Jesus hates everything metaphysical. And all of a sudden, she's found a whole new audience to latch onto, to leech money from, because they're eating it up, right? By demonizing the community she spent over 20 years profiting from, okay? This is not a spiritual woman. This is not someone you want to follow. This is not someone you want to be around. This is a leech. She is a parasite. And like her, there are tons of people out there who are doing this to you day in and day out. They're using the name of Jesus to demonize things that Jesus practiced and then holding it against you to get you to join their congregation or join their movement or join their whatever. This is cult behavior. And if you guys aren't seeing that, it's very important that you see it. This is how cults operate. By polarizing, by demonizing, by separating themselves from other things and making themselves like, this is the only way, this is the way, that way is not the way. Okay? That's the language of polarity. That's the language of cults. Okay? Whenever you have an organization of people or an ideology or a leader attempting to control your behavior and your thoughts and the way that you operate in the world, that is not a safe space. That is a space of control. And in the world of spirituality, that has become normal. Normal. Now, that is not to say that some of these really deep metaphysical concepts haven't been watered down into New Age bullshit, because they have. They have. They have totally been desecrated. They have been utilized incorrectly. It is absolutely true that you can access lower levels of density and lower level beings if you don't know what you're doing and if you don't have practice and support and skill. Yeah. 100%. But that doesn't equate to these ancient practices that predated Christianity as being evil. That's ridiculous. I just need to say that. Okay? So when you have people like Doreen Virtue, see her for what it is. Because she has conned an entire community of people for over 2 decades, made a mint off of them, and then turned around and trashed them, okay? So she could make a mint off the next cool thing, which is New Age to Jesus. That's the new thing now, okay? She's smart. She's actually a genius. She's also a psychopath, but she's a genius, okay? So Megan says, I was in a cult for 28 years, and that's 100% my experience. Yeah, I know many people. In fact, I work with clients on a one-to-one like chart basis, a lot of them left cults. And they come to me because they're like, I don't even know who I am. And then I get to do their charts and teach them, like, okay, here you go. Here's a blueprint for who you are. Here's a blueprint for like when you were born, what was in store for you. Go out and be yourself in the world. Like, that's what I do for people now. And it's heartbreaking to see the disastrous PTSD effects of people who have been in cults of all kinds. So I feel in my heart so important to remind you that you need to practice above everything understanding resonance and discernment, understanding how to feel in your body when something feels true, when something doesn't, when something feels like it's pushing a boundary, when something feels scary, okay? Fear and the tactic of fear is a very powerful mechanism by which your thoughts are controlled, your behavior is controlled, and your spirit is controlled. That is the number one way cult leaders have gotten away with controlling behavior in their communities. That is not of God. That is not of love. That is not, has nothing to do with faith and spirituality. That is a control mechanism. Okay? Man-made control mechanism. Brilliant for controlling other human beings. So whether you're looking at teachers online, and there's a handful of people that other people love that I experience as being not true. Okay, I'm not going to share all of their names because they're super popular and famous. Doreen Virtue, I have followed her for so long, I have zero qualms calling her out because I know who she is. These other two, they're very young in comparison to Doreen. They haven't been around as long. And honestly, I don't think they know what they're doing. I think that they're just following something that looked profitable and looked attractive, and they don't recognize what's actually going on, like what they're playing into. Whereas Doreen, I'm like, you know, girl, you know, you're still doing it. Yes, of course, Missy, but that being said, there are always going to be a need for teachers, okay? There's always going to be a need for teachers. There's always going to be a need for guides. There's always going to be a need for channels and prophets because otherwise we wouldn't exist, okay? There is always a need for people who come into the world and they have this access that's really amazing that they get to share with the world. But there's also always going to be people who capitalize on that and see a way to get stuff from a community of people in a disingenuous way. So it's not that teachers are bad or guides are bad or, you know, anything like that. It's for you to be very conscious of where your consciousness is being directed, how much stock you're putting into the things that you are receiving, and again, seeing yourself as equal to the person that you're learning from. Not seeing that person as being above you, better than you, you know, and following everything that they do or say to the letter. It's about you connecting with other perspectives outside of yourself so you can better understand yourself and build a deeper relationship to you. Every true teacher will ask you to deepen a relationship with yourself. Will ask you not to see them on a pedestal or to see them as, you know, whatever, unique, different, divine, or whatever, but just to learn from whatever the wisdom they feel inspired to share so that you can deepen your relationship to self. But again, just like there's great doctors and shit doctors, just like there's awesome teachers and terrible teachers in like the educational system, just like there's a great education and a totally warped education, great therapist, bad therapist, the same thing is true of teachers and guides, especially during these past, I would say 5 years, 5 to 10 almost. And again, the most important thing is discernment. I love to listen to wisdom from others because I get to know myself more deeply when I do that. And I'm also very conscious of who I'm listening to and what I'm making it mean inside of me and how it feels in my body when I receive it, okay? If I feel contracted and terrified, that's a really deep message for me that this is discordant, okay? So this was just really, really, really present on my heart to come live and talk about, because I've watched it happen in communities for a long time and I've never really spoken to it. Um, but now more than ever, and I unfortunately I see it a lot in women. I see a lot of female voices who have these massive followings on YouTube, and you watch them and you're just like, what? It's like you're playing a part. It's like you're playing pretend. Like, I'm a pretend spiritual teacher. I'm a pretend, and then the depth is just missing. And then you see that in the way that they talk about things like politics or the physical reality. That's a great marker for you to like pay attention to, because if the teacher is talking about material concepts in a very polarizing way, that is enough information for you to know that that person shouldn't be someone that you really aspire to listen to, because their consciousness has not yet gotten to the point where they understand that polarizing on a material level distracts from spiritual growth, period. Every time. Doesn't matter. It always does. And it's okay for them as a person to have an opinion. That's different. You are a person in a body, you have an opinion. But when you're out there in the world teaching other people to polarize based on the opinion that you have, that's problematic. And I've seen that by these so-called spiritual leaders in really high positions. That is problematic. And they're usually quite young when I see them. Like, I would say maybe in their 30s or maybe a little bit younger than that. So just be aware. Be aware of that. Be aware of what you're receiving and who you're receiving it from, how it feels in your body. Learn to establish discernment and resonance and mind-heart coherence. Learn to be still enough to be able to tell the difference between information that feels solid to you and information that feels discordant to you. That's such a valuable gift, not just for this, but for life. It'll be the thing that helps you make decisions in your life, like career decisions, relationship decisions, anything. It'll be the guiding principle by which you really find your way in the world. And you are always in dialogue with yourself. Like, your higher knowing is always in dialogue with yourself. It's always trying to help you find your way. But life gets so loud and so busy, we often don't even make the time to hear ourselves and hear what we are trying to give to ourselves. So make that a priority. So with that, I leave you on this Sunday. I hope you have an amazing rest of your weekend and a beautiful start to your week. And if anything I've said is like, whoa, and you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. And I will check back in with you guys. All right, my loves. Have an amazing one. Bye.